This MonsterVerse thing really needs to fucking die. Full transparency, I haven't enjoyed a single MonsterVerse movie at all. Godzilla 2014 was the most boring and forced movie that I think I've ever seen in my life. It focused way too much on uninteresting characters and didn't even let God-fucking-Zilla have any screen time. Most of the movie is the military making plans to stop these big spider mute things. When Godzilla actually does turn up in the movie to wreck some shit, they cut away from it and show glimpses of it in the background on TV. I'm getting some vibes here. The only compliments that I could really give this movie is the creature design and the end fight scene. Watching Godzilla do this was pretty fucking satisfying. A couple years later, they released Kong Skull Island, a movie that is so bland and forgettable that I actually struggle to remember what actually happened in the movie. It's a movie that wasted talented actors like Samuel L. Jackson and Tom Hiddleston. They even made King Kong boring as fuck.
What the fuck are you talking about?
How does one manage to make King Kong boring? King Kong, this giant ape, has been part of pop culture since the 30s, roughly 20 years longer than Godzilla himself. And again, the only compliment I can really give this movie is the creature designs. I really couldn't even give the fight scenes because I can't remember any good ones. And this brings me to Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Now, full transparency, I have not watched this movie in its entirety. I have sat through the first 20 minutes of this movie and I turned it off and went to bed. I was so tired. It was probably the most predictable movie that I had seen in a while. And like I said, I haven't seen this movie in its entirety. I have only watched 20 minutes of this movie. But let me just guess how it turns out. Now, stop me if I'm wrong. Now, this station is supposedly able to monitor Godzilla's vitals. Based on that information, I can guess that Godzilla dies at the end of the movie when fighting King Ghidorah, and then he manages to come back, having learned a new ability, and kills King Ghidorah, claiming his role as King of the Monsters. And just to add insult to injury, Vera Farmiga is the villain of the movie. Did I guess right? Subtle foreshadowing or on the nose writing? I'll let you decide. And this finally brings me to Godzilla vs Kong, the latest entry in this MonsterVerse. Now, based on the trailer, this movie plays out exactly how I anticipated it. I didn't really like the trailer for this movie. Based on the trailer for this movie, I predicted exactly how this movie plays out. Godzilla and Kong duke it out once, and maybe twice in the film, and then at the end, it turns out that Godzilla isn't the villain after all, and it's some other monster, most likely Mechagodzilla. He will come out of nowhere and force King Kong and Godzilla to team up. Oh, sorry, I got a little BVS in there. My bad. This movie was as predictable and as bland as I expected it to be. This movie has no proper characters, none of them have names that I can remember, and none of them are any kind of interesting. This movie tries to give a reason why Godzilla wants to fight Kong, and it doesn't even make sense. Adult Woman number 1 says that Godzilla and Kong have an ancient rivalry that's not explored at all, but then the movie also says that Godzilla wants to be the alpha titan, and Godzilla's a threat to his power. This also didn't really make sense. Based on the Kong movie that came out before, Kong is a loner. And also, he's kind of trapped on Skull Island. He can't exactly swim off the island. He literally poses zero threat to Godzilla himself. So why does Godzilla feel threatened by him? Never in these movies has Kong commanded the allegiance of other monsters. So he's not exactly an alpha. One of the biggest issues of the movie is that it focuses way too much on Kong. Godzilla is barely in the movie, aside from 3 scenes that I can remember. It actually baffles me, because at least Batman vs Superman focused on both of the characters rather than just one of them. This movie essentially has 2 campaigns. Kong leading the boring characters to Pandora, while obnoxious characters try to unravel the mystery behind Godzilla's recent behavior. This, of course, leads to the reveal of Mechagodzilla. And I never thought I'd actually say this about one of these movies, but Mechagodzilla looks like shit. His design is so average and boring that it actually inspired laughter out of me. Also, he gets taken out way too quickly. It literally felt like it was an afterthought. He turns up, gets destroyed, and that's it. He barely has any screen time. He's like fighting them for 2 minutes of screen time. And the trio that went looking for Mechagodzilla are some of the most egregiously annoying characters I have witnessed all year. And this is coming from a guy who watched Midsummer less than a week ago. Their lines are particularly bad. There's one line where they're talking about tap water and my eyes rolled so far into the back of my skull I was blind. I didn't like any of the characters in this movie, but these jackasses I actually despised because of how badly they were written. As with all of these movies, there are only 2 compliments that I could really give these movies. One is the designs of the monsters. Godzilla, King Kong, they look great. They sound amazing. I loved the sound of Godzilla's first roar back in 2014. That was one of the only scenes in that movie that I remember vividly because it was amazing. And the other is the fight scenes in this movie. The fights between Godzilla and King Kong in this movie will get your blood jacked. They're fun to watch. They're actually quite creative. It's really fun to watch King Kong hang off of the side of a building and then use his axe to go for the head. Joke's on you, Thor.
You should have gone for the head.
Godzilla's also using his fire breath. It looks cool, it sounds awesome, and there is literally zero regard for human casualties in this movie. This movie makes Man of Steel look like a mild skirmish compared to this. Buildings are falling over, blowing up, being thrown. There is no mercy for any of these people. And it even surprised me in the end. Because the movie focused so much on King Kong himself, I actually expected him to win. No, Godzilla actually wins. Godzilla actually kills him before they bring him back. But in the end, Godzilla vs Kong is not a really good movie. If you want mindless destruction, you'll get it, but they're very few and far between. The middle section of this movie is boring as all hell. It drags on for far too long, and it was literally in the movie just to give King Kong his axe. None of these characters are interesting, they're all forgettable, some detestable, none are interesting, and I guess that's just how this movie is going to end up. A forgotten, boring movie.